So I call in one person who doesn't need any presentation. And so I'm honored to introduce to everybody Don Norman. Don, are you with us?
Hello. Hey! Thank you, Elena.
Thank you. Ciao. So I was guest, now I'm host. So I'm trying to switch gears and try to use this half an hour to possibly deep dive in some of these important concepts, which are how do we design a better world after this, right? So Don Norman doesn't need presentation. He has been one of the most famous person in the design arena in the last many years, authors of many books, among the others, the psychology of everyday thing, the designer, the emotional design, the complex, whatever. I can name them. But Don is actually in San Diego. So we met each other in San Diego and a few years ago when he started as director of the design lab and the adventure of design lab by UCSD in San Diego. And of course is professor there. And by being in San Diego, we started many initiatives to really bring design on a strategic agendas in this city and to connect the dots between the different communities of designs that we found a little bit segregated in this city. And we founded, actually Don and Design Lab funded an organization called Design Forward Alliance. And through that, I had the pleasure of being with Don often, at least once a month, right, Don? We have at least a meeting. I don't know if we accomplished much, but we did incredible things, not only conferencing, but really trying to work with the community to grow the sensitivity about what design in a sense with a bigger picture is. And so Don, welcome again. And I've been between Srini and you, so I also another interesting part of this handover. So why social innovation? Let's start from the word, and let's start from I'm really curious why you chose social innovation to for this marathon. And I might have my ideas, but I want to let you the ground.
Well, as I continue in my career, I'm continually learning. And I learn from the people I interact with, like you, Helena. And actually your mentor, who's Ezio Mancini from the Politecnico di Milano. And Mancini wrote a book about society and social interaction and social design and societal design. And I think that was very, very important. And as we move from a designer of devices like the computer I'm sitting in front of, or the earphones, or cell phones, or any kind of device, or even services, we're moving towards much more important societal issues. For example, like the one that you were just discussing, how we respond to the COVID disease. Now, these are not the sort of typical issues that designers face. And when you go out into the society and you try to do things for the society, you have to work with the society. In fact, we no longer can be the designers who come in and we send out our design researchers and anthropologists and study the issues and come back and decide we understand the issues. And then we do our normal type of ideation and we build prototypes and we come back to the community and we say, here's a solution to the problem that maybe you didn't even know you had. That's an imperialist approach. And that's not the way to do things. That's not the way to have anybody accept what you're doing. And on top of that, you may not understand the depths of the culture or what people themselves are capable of. And I think that what we must do, again, to take both, I wrote a chapter, Everyone's a Designer, and Mancini wrote a book that basically what everyone designs. That there are 7.5 billion people on this planet. First of all, there are not enough designers in the world to come in and solve their problems. But second of all, in those 7.5 billion, there are really bright, creative people who truly understand their own problems and have already started to approach a solution. And so what we can do is we can build on that, or we can go and help them, and we act not as dictators of design, but as these typical issues that designers face. And when you go out into the society and you try to do things for the society, you have to work with the society. In fact, we no longer can be the designers who come in and we send out our design researchers and anthropologists and study the issues and come back and decide we understand the issues. And then we do our normal type of ideation and we build prototypes and we come back to the community and we say, here's a solution to the problem that maybe you didn't even know you had. That's an imperialist approach. And that's not the way to do things. That's not the way to have anybody accept what you're doing. And on top of that, you may not understand the depths of the culture or what people themselves are capable of. And I think that what we must do, again, to take I wrote a chapter, Everyone's a Designer, and Mancini wrote a book that basically what everyone designs. That there are 7.5 billion people on this planet. First of all, there are not enough designers in the world to come in and solve their problems. But second of all, in those 7.5 billion, there are really bright, creative people who truly understand their own problems and have already started to approach a solution. And so what we can do is we can build on that, or we can go and help them, and we act not as dictators of design, but as facilitators and mentors. And we can help because they often don't have enough money or facilities to really attack the root cause of the problem. So they tend to attack the symptoms. And what we really need to do is attack the root causes of these major societal issues. And so I think that what Mancini was talking about is what we must do in the future. We must change the way we design to design with and by the society.
Yeah, and as thanks for mentioning, yes, I've been I've studied and worked with Ezio for many years, and surely it formed my the way I see and word, and I actually practiced my design in education and research so far. So one of the aspects that the Mancini underlines, talking about social innovation specifically, is not only as designers facilitating problems that are bigger and there in the society with people that are involved, but it talks about social innovation as the effect, as every time that the ideas, the new system, the new service, the new whatever created, not only respond to a social need, but generates a new form of social relationships and collaboration. So this is an aspect that for Ezio is really relevant in the definition of social innovation. So not just responding to a social need, but also creating a relationship and collaboration, which is the part that has been partially challenged by the epidemic, by this pandemic, and the need of being a little detached right now, which made emerge many new different form of collaborations. What do you think about this? What do you agree that is social innovation when it generates new relationships?
Well, what's really neat about design is great design always brings you unexpected results. Because in fact, when we design something, it enables people to do things they couldn't do before. And as a result, the clever people say, oh, and they get to use things and they get to do things that we never even thought of. And so these collaborations are wonderful because when we collaborate, as designers, we are learning as much as we are helping. And we are learning new types of behavior. Because human behavior is really at the heart of all of this. Because human behavior is very complex. It goes in unexpected ways. The scientists who study human behavior, and that's what I used to do. I was a cognitive scientist. We are just at the very beginning. We do not understand how to predict, and we can explain behavior after it occurs, but we can't predict. It's much too complex, much too rich. And so working as a collaborative team where you have people from different cultures and different training and different backgrounds is a wonderful way to proceed. It's you learn all sorts of unexpected things. And by the way, it's also frustrating and difficult because you don't understand each other. You sometimes have different points of view and different conflicts, and you may disagree, but you don't even understand why you're disagreeing. And that's a part of social life, working with real people.
Agreed with all the pros and cons. So have you seen any good example done around us, or in vitro that could represent a good example on how people reacted positively to the pandemic? And in this sense, do you have any example in mind of something that could be taken as a good example on how people organized and found a solution during these difficult times, if any?
Well, that's a really complex question because there are so many complexities to the way people have responded. So let's take several examples. I'll just talk about the response within the United States, which, because I'm here and so I can talk about it, I understand it. We had medical advice in the beginning, but in the very beginning, we didn't really understand what was happening. It took us a while to recognize that this was going to be a major factor, and moreover, that it was different from things we had had before, because we discovered that we knew there was an epidemic starting in China, but we didn't know how big it was, and we didn't know how fast it would travel. On top of that, we knew it was a coronavirus, but there are multiple coronaviruses, and the epidemic that happened a number of years ago, SARS, was a coronavirus. So at first, a lot of our assumptions were based on the way that SARS propagated and how we managed to work with SARS. And we tried to apply those very same ideas to this new novel coronavirus. And a lot of them are correct, but not all of them. And so we're still learning. In fact, even every day, we're learning more and more about how this virus attacks people and causes the COVID disease. Now, there are, though, a couple of important principles that seem to hold for every infectious disease. And one of them is the need for really good sanitation, because it's transmitted by personal contact, but it's transmitted by particles in the air. When you cough, when you breathe, when you yelp, when you shout, when you sing, when you exercise, you exhale particles. A good way of thinking about that is if you walk into a restaurant, you smell the food. How far away is the food? The food could be 10, 20, 30 meters away and you smell it. When someone lights a cigarette from quite a long distance, you can smell it. How do you smell it? Well, they're aerosols. They're little particles of the cigarette, of the food that are through the air, and you inhale and you smell it. Well, now imagine that's the disease virus. Yeah, the disease virus travels in the air just like the smell of food, and that means you can be 30 meters away and smell it. So yes, early on we said we should keep a distance of 2 meters, mainly because the scientists knew 2 meters wasn't enough. But it's really hard to maintain a distance of 2 meters from everybody. And to say we should keep 3, 4, 5, 6 meters apart would be impossible. And so here's one example where human behavior and scientific knowledge about diseases conflict. Second, wear face masks. Well, some countries, Japan is a good example, are very used to it. If you have any cold or any infection or even the slightest hint, you wear a face mask. But in the United States, no, that was a foreign concept. And it took a while for people to understand that we should always keep our faces covered. And then it was, oh my goodness, where do you get the face mask? And oh, let's get the very best. No, you don't need the very best. You can make your own. And it took a while for people learning you can just take any basically scarf and you fold it 3 or 4 times and put it around your head. But you got to cover the nose and you got to cover the mouth and you have to make sure there are no air leaks. But you can do that. I made one out of a scarf and 2 rubber bands, and it's quite good. But it took a while. Now, we finally reached that point. People were okay. They were isolated. They stayed at home. They kept 2 meters apart from other people, and they wore face masks whenever they went out to a crowd. And that lasted for a month, then 2 months, then 3 months, then 4 months. That's a pretty long time to be isolated, to stay at home. That's a pretty long time to have to wear a mask every time you went out. And so people, it just naturally said, enough, all right, come on. And on top of that, even though this is a very deadly virus, the number of people that are infected is a small percentage of the population. And so many people say, I don't know anybody who ever got COVID, so why should I worry? I think it's a hoax. I don't know a single person. Well, it's like 1 out of 3,000 people get infected. Now, in a large country, that's a tremendous number of people. But for any individual, yeah, I only know of me personally, I only know of 1 person who got COVID. And I don't know anybody who died from COVID. So it's very hard to take seriously 4 months of this type of regime, uncomfortable, and yet not knowing anybody who had suffered. And so people gave up. And so now what we are seeing is a recurrence all around the world of people saying, let's go back. Let's go back. And I'm healthy. I don't need to wear a mask. And they do not recognize that the mask is not just for you. It's you can have the disease and be completely unaware of it. And so you're spitting out germs. It's called shredding. You're shredding the virus without being aware of it. And so the mask protects the other people. So it's all about human behavior, and it's very complex. And we're learning things every day as we experience this. And this is a behavioral problem. And actually, that's the sort of thing designers are good at. I mean, designers are not experts in medicine, but we are supposed to be experts in human behavior because we design things for people. So we have to understand how people react and use things. And here is a case where I understand why people are frustrated and want to break the rules. They're fed up, tired, and they don't have enough evidence themselves. So why do I trust these scientists? Not only that, but the scientists change their minds all the time. Well, actually, that's the way science works. Science is studying complex things, and if new evidence comes in, yeah, you change your minds. But to the public, these scientists don't know what they're talking about. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we were talking earlier about this, how long actually the curve is been, right? It's like we flatten the curve at the point that, like you're saying, we don't have even evidences of people around us who actually got the virus. But the curve is very long. And remember, at the beginning, we were talking about weeks, and then it became months, naturally. And I am with you that, in my opinion, in the different, if you want to see the different moments of this evolution, there's been a reaction, an immediate reaction, and then there's the second phase of the reaction, and now that we are in a kind of a rebound, but with the risk of having probably the most riskful moment right now, which is this partial rebound, and very little of scenarios on a longer term, which is what really makes sense to do in in a situation in which, you know, if we think beyond the next month or the next 3 months, and that's where everybody's having a hard time. Our schools are still discussing what to do, what hybrid models to bring in for fall, right? The restaurants are struggling in having a few clients because of social distances, not being able to have enough, you know, a wealthy model, business model, so and so on and so forth. So to me, the point here is really how we help people to really think on different paradigms, and in my opinion is really thinking beyond what are the solutions that we created in this phase of the reaction, right, to contain the spread of the virus. What of these measures stay longer because of the rebound and still a very high risk before vaccine or whatever will be the solution, and what measures shouldn't be adopted permanently because they are based on an emergency. So for instance, even the extreme sanitation could be something that doesn't make sense in normal life. The build, like I said earlier, of partitions could be not a good solution for public spaces. So how do you see this designing for the next phases beyond the, you know, the phase we are in right now?
It's a really difficult problem because, first of all, it is lasting longer than we predicted. Because the normal course of a virus is it goes up, and then as we put in social distancing and sanitation and lockdown and contact tracing, it goes down. So even when you're at the peak, we were worried that people say, oh, we're at the peak, we can relax. But no, that's only halfway through. It goes down. Unfortunately, because it took so long to get to that point, people started relaxing too soon. And therefore, in the United States, if you look at the data, it's gone up, but it hasn't come down. It stayed there. It stayed there and stayed there, and it's prolonging it. And therefore, coming down is going to take even longer. Now, that wreaks economic havoc upon the society. And at some point, you start asking, which is worse? The fact that people are going to die of hunger, that people can't live anymore, they don't have any money, they're being evicted from their homes, they can't buy food, et cetera, they can't afford health care. In fact, they're even afraid to go to hospitals because they're afraid they might catch the disease by going to the hospital. And so sometimes the prohibitions we put into place seem just as bad as not having the prohibitions. And that's one problem. Second problem is the one I've already described, that people they don't see the evidence with their own eyes, and therefore they're not going to necessarily believe it. We had great trouble, and we haven't succeeded yet, in stopping cigarette smoking, because we say it kills you, but when I smoke, it doesn't feel like it kills me, because it may kill me 30 years from now. So it's difficult. Now, the positive side is we've learned to do things at a distance, like this very conference that we are having now, where people around the world can watch us discuss things. And there are many cases. Here's an example. We teach a lecture class, where we bring in outside speakers from around the world, actually, noted designers, to talk about the work they're doing. And we have about 100 people in the audience, so a large number of students. In fact, some of the students are taking it as a class to learn about what is happening around the world. And when we switched to virtual, so the speakers didn't travel to our campus, but they stayed at home and gave a talk. And the audience didn't go to the auditorium and all sit together, but they stayed in their homes and they watched on their computers. Well, at first people thought this was going to be horrible. But no, first of all, we could get more speakers than ever before, because we didn't have to pay them money to travel, and they didn't have to spend a couple of days coming to visit in order to give a 1-hour talk. And so we could get people. The same with me. I've given now talks all across the world, because they say, hey, you didn't want to travel all the way to India, but now you don't have to. You can do it from your comfort of your own home. And that's one thing. But second, the people in this class have said, you know, this is better than when I had to go to the auditorium and listen, because there I was in the rear, the rear end of the auditorium, far away from the speaker, who was very small. And if I wanted to ask a question, it wasn't so easy. And then even there, I was so far away. And now I feel like the person who's talking directly to me. They're looking right at me. And if I ask a question, it feels like I'm right face to face and we're discussing these issues. And so in many ways, these large lectures have turned out to be better than in real life, because the virtuality allowed you to be closer and more intimate to the speaker. So there are lots of things that I think are very positive that have come out of this, and I hope they're going to stay around. Now, the physical separation, the plexiglass barriers and all that, no, that'll go away. That's in the way. But we have to remember something else. This epidemic was predicted, not this particular one, but the infectious disease doctors for a long time have been saying, look, you know, we've had a number of different epidemics, and SARS has come and went away, and now there's going to be something else coming, and that's this one, because the coronavirus. And, you know, after this goes away, there'll be another one, and these are very serious. You know, the one that is called the Spanish flu in the early 1900s killed more people than died in the war, in the World War I, which was right about the same time. More people died from the virus than died from the war, even though the war was deadly. And so this is going to keep coming. And so a lot of the lessons that we are learning, we should not forget, because next time one comes, let's quickly do social isolation and staying at home sooner. Because if we could have done this much quicker, this would have been over with much earlier.
Yeah. The famous under one that goes and loses. So I agree. So we have 4 minutes left, probably 3 by the time I pass the testimony to the next person. And I would say, well, I know that you have. You know, you are in a very special position, Dawn, because you work in universities where a lot of medical health innovations are happening, and you work with infectologists, and so you are probably much more, you know, much better what's going on, and you can discuss with these amazing people what's actually. I know you got the secret on how to travel safely during the pandemic. I don't know if you want to reveal it or if we want to leave the crowd with this mystery, but is there any way to travel safely?
No, because I'm not sure I'm ready. In fact, I know I'm not ready to travel. A very good friend of mine, who is an infectious disease physician in the medical school at my university and treats patients all the time in the hospital system, told me just yesterday on a telephone call that, you know, he said he's heard that I was going to go on a vacation starting July 1st. And he said, well, we have figured out the way you can actually travel safely. And I'll tell you this next time that we get together. So he hasn't told me the secret. So I can't reveal it to you because it's still a secret from me, except that this is somebody I trust. And if he says he knows how to travel safely, well, there may be something to it. But I don't think we're going to do that because we happen to live in a really wonderful part of the world. We live in a relatively good climate all year round. And we live in a beautiful, lovely area, as you well know. You too live in the same region, Elena. And it's pretty ideal. And our food, we can order our food and it's brought to us, or we can cook ourselves, which we much prefer. And but we can order the groceries, which get delivered to us. And we all do this. Is really neat because when it's delivered, I never have to touch the person who delivers it. The person comes and puts it in front of our door and goes away. And then I come and pick it up and take it inside. So it's very safe. And my wife and I are enjoying trying all sorts of new foods and new meals. And We don't have to travel. But you're right. I'm very, very fortunate. Not everybody is as fortunate as we are.
Great. Great. So, as see, this is a perfect example of one of the effect of this post-pandemic is thinking, or post-pandemic is to think differently about what is the real meaning of a vacation or staycation, like somebody called it, and enjoying what we have. And there, in this case, as I said to Alessandro, the relationship with nature, that amazing nature that we have here. So we are particularly lucky. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you very much for this. We have